Lord to administer the entire universe. In the Bhagavad Gita 3.12, it is stated, Istan Bhogan hi yo Deva. The demigods in charge of the various necessities of life, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, supply all necessities to men. But one who enjoy these gifts without offering them in return to the demigod is certainly a thief. In this connection, Srila Prabhupada has made the following comment regarding the demigods. Quote, the demigods are empowered administrator of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, other blessings for maintaining the body and the soul of all living entities are entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in the different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasure and displeasure depends on the performance of yajna by the human beings. Next, text 6, translation. Those who worship the demigods receive reciprocation from the demigods in a way just corresponding to the offering. The demigods are attendant of karma like a person's shadow, but sadhus are actually merciful to the fallen. Purport. The word Chayevna Karma Sachivaha are significant here. Chaya means shadow. The shadow of the body precisely follows the movement of the body. The shadow has no power to move in a way different from the movement of the body. Similarly, as stated here, Bhajante ye yatha devan deva api tathevatan. The results of demigods award to living beings correspond exactly to the living being's action. The demigods are empowered by the Lord to follow precisely the particular karma of a living entity in awarding him happiness and distress. Just as a shadow cannot move independently, the demigods cannot punish or reward a living being independently. Although the demigods are millions of times more powerful than the human being on the earth, they are ultimately tiny servants of God whom the Lord allows to play as a controller of the universe. Next text. O Brahmana, although I am satisfied simply by seeing you, I still wish to inquire about those duties which give pleasure to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any mortal who faithfully hears about them is freed from all kind of fear. Purport. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Narad Muni might have reluctant to instruct Vasudev because of natural respect for Vasudev's exalted position as the father of Krishna. Narada Muni have thought that since Vasudev was already perfect in Krishna consciousness, there was no need to instruct him in the process of devotional service. Therefore, anticipating Narad's possible reluctance, Vasudev specifically requested Narada to preach to him about the devotional service to Krishna. This is the symptom of a pure devotee. A pure devotee of Krishna never considers himself exalted. To the contrary, he meekly feels that his devotional service is most imperfect, but that somehow or other Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, is accepting such imperfect service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has stated in this regard, Pranadapi Suni Chena Tarur Api Sahishnuna. One can chant the holy name of Lord in the humble state of mind, feeling himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. Sikshashtam 3. Text 8. In a previous birth on this earth, I worshipped the Supreme Lord Ananta, who alone can award liberation. But because I desired to have a child, I did not worship him for liberation. Thus, I was bewildered by the Lord's illusory energy. Purport. According to Sridhar Swami, the word kila means indeed. meaning indeed it is true, it is said, or as is well known, indicates that Vasudeva was remembering the words of Lord had spoken to him when the Lord had appeared as four-armed Vishnu in the prison of Kansa. Srila Jiva Goswami states that from the anxiety of Vasudeva, which is expressed in the verse by the word Apuyujam na Apuyam na moksha mohito dev mahya. It is it is discerned that Vasudeva had heard of the curse of Brahmana at Pindarak against the Yadu dynasty, and that he could understand from this curse that the Lord's disappearance from the earth was imminent. Vasudeva understood that the Lord's manifest pastime within this universe were coming to end, and he now lamented that he had not directly taken advantage of opportunity to worship Krishna, to go back home, back to Godhead. Text 9, translation. My dear Lord, you are always true to your vow. Please instruct me clearly so that by your mercy I may easily free myself from material existence, which is full of many dangers and keep us constantly bound in fear. Purport. The word Muchiyema is significant here. In the previous verse, Vasudeva stated that because he had been bewildered by the illusory energy of Lord, he could not achieve from the Supreme Personality of Godhead the boon of liberation. Therefore, he is now approaching the pure devotee of Lord, confident that by the mercy of Lord's devotee, he will certainly achieve liberation from material bondage. Text 10. Translation. Sukdev Goswami said, O King, Devarishi Narad was pleased by the question of the highly intelligent Vasudeva because they suggested the transcendental qualities of Supreme Personality of Godhead. They reminded Narada of Lord Krishna. Thus Narada replied to Vasudeva as follows. Text 11. Sri Narada said, O best of Text 11 translation. Sri Narada said, O best of Sattvatas, you have quite correctly asked about the eternal duty of the living entity toward the Supreme Lord. Such devotional service to the Lord is so potent that its performance can purify the entire universe. Purport. A similar statement was made by Sri Sukadeva Goswami in the first verse of second canto when he congratulated Parikshit Maharaj for asking about Krishna.
इसका तो कर रहे थे ना
Varyan eshte prashna krito lok hitam nirva. My dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kind of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Similarly, okay. Purport. A similar statement was made by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Translation. Sri Narada said, O best of Sattvatas, you have quite correctly asked about the eternal duty of the living entity toward the Supreme Lord. Such devotional service to the Lord is so potent that its performance can purify the entire universe. Purport. A similar statement was made by Sri Sukadeva Goswami in the first verse of the second canto when he congratulated Parikshit Maharaj for asking about Krishna. Varyan eshate prashna krito lok hitam nipa atmavit samhita pumsha sarvato vidushya paraha. My dear king, Your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kind of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Similarly, Srila Suta Goswami congratulated the enquiring sages of Naimisharanya in the following verse. Muneha sadhu prishto ham. O sage, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. Narada will now answer Vasudev's inquiry about the process of devotional service. Later, at the end of their conversation, he will reply to Vasudev's comments about Vasudev's own faulty intentions. Text 12, translation. Pure devotional service rendered to the Supreme Lord is spiritually so potent that simply by hearing about such transcendental service, by chanting its glories in response, by meditating on it, by respectfully and faithfully accepting it, or by praising the devotional service of other, even person who hate the demigods and all other living beings can be immediately purified. Purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented that the word Sadharma refers to Bhagavad Dharma. This is also confirmed by Sridhar Swami. Bhagavad Dharma is spiritually so powerful that even those who by worldly standards are implicated in various ways in sinful behavior can easily be purified by adopting any of the process mentioned in this verse. In the practice of ordinary piety, one worships God with the expectation of receiving something in return for one's service. Similarly, the impersonalist aspires for his own liberation, wishfully thinking that he will become equal to God. In Bhagavad Dharma, however, there is no such impurity. Bhagavad Dharma is devotional service to the Lord in which the only objective is the satisfaction of the Lord. If one rejects this process and instead wants to hear about, teach, or meditate upon another process, the chance for immediate purification is lost. Neither ordinary material yoga process meant for achieving mystic power nor impersonal processes based on speculation have the power to purify immediately those who have fallen into sinful behavior. Sad Dharma or Bhagavad Dharma, pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is unique in that even the most fallen Sad Dharma or Bhagavad Dharma, pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is unique in that even the most fallen soul can immediately rise to the highest perfectional stage by surrendering at the lotus feet of Krishna or his pure devotees. This was vividly demonstrated in the preaching work of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially in the case of sinful brothers Jagai and Madhai. Text 13. Translation. Today you have made me remember my Lord, the supremely blissful personality of Godhead Narayana. The Supreme Lord is so auspicious that whosoever hears and chants about him becomes completely pious. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami has stated, Narayanas tadrasya dhamena madhya guru rupo Narayanashriha. The word Narayana in this verse refers to the incarnation of Godhead Narayana Rishi, who acted as Narad's spiritual master in this dharma. Srila Jiva Goswami has also pointed out Smaritah iti. The word Smarita, he is brought back to memory, indicates that because of Narada's absorption in the worship of Krishna, he had forgotten Lord Narayana. In other words, if intense engagement engagement in devotional service makes one sometimes forget the personality of Godhead. By Krishna's arrangement, such a sincere servitor will again be reminded of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 14, translation. To explain the devotional service to the Lord, sages have related the ancient history of the conversation between the great soul, King Vedeha, and the son of Rishabha. Purport. The word Itihasam Puratanam means ancient historical account are significant here. Srimad Bhagavatam is Nigama Kalpatarur Galitam Phalam, the ripe fruit of the desired tree of Vedic knowledge. In the pages of Bhagavatam, we find true historical narration relating to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the liberation of the conditioned soul. These historical accounts are not fiction or mythology, but describe the wonderful activities of the Lord and his devotees that took place in yugas previous to the advent of this puny age. Although mundane scholars have foolishly tried to depict the Bhagavatam as a mythological work or a recent creation, the actual fact is that Srimad Bhagavatam is a perfect transcendental literature describing not only the entire situation of this universe but also that which lies far beyond this universe in both the material and spiritual skies. If one seriously studies the Srimad Bhagavatam, he becomes the most learned intellectual man. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desires that all pious persons become highly learned by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and then preach the glories of the Lord in a scientific way all over the world. It is essential that we hear these historical accounts such as the conversation between the Nav Yogendra and King Videha with complete faith and submission. Then, as stated in the verse 12 of this chapter, even if our former life is filled with abominable activities, simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we shall be promoted to the same transcendental status as the Lord and his pure devotees. This is the extraordinary power of Bhagavad history, as contrasted with useless mundane historical accounts which ultimately serves no purpose. Although mundane historians justify their work on the plea that we have to learn from history, we can practically see that the world situation is now rapidly deteriorating into unbearable conflict and chaos, while so-called historians stand helplessly by. But the Bhagavad historians who have faithfully heard Srimad Bhagavatam can give perfect and potent instructions for the restoration of peaceful and blissful world. Therefore, those who are inclined to enrich their intellectual life through the study of history should educate themselves in the historical narration of Srimad Bhagavatam. This will bring them the perfection of intellectual and spiritual life. Text 15, translation. Swambhu Manu had a son named Maharaj Priyavrata, and among Priyavrata's son was Angidhara. From Angidhara was born Nabhi, whose son was known as Rishabhadev. Purport. The genealogical background of the son of Rishabhadev is given in this verse. Text 16. Sri Rishabhadev is accepted as an expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. He incarnated in this world to propagate those religious principles that led living entities to ultimate liberation. He had 100 sons, all perfect in Vedic knowledge. Text 17. Translation. Of the 100 sons of Lord Rishabhadev, the eldest, Bharata, was completely devoted to Lord Narayana. It is because of Bharata's fame that this planet is now celebrated as the Great Bharatvarsha. Text 18. King Bharat rejected this material world, considering all types of material pleasure temporary and useless. Leaving his beautiful young wife and family, he worshipped Lord Hari by severe austerities and attained the abode of the Lord after 3 lifetimes. Purport. The complete narration of 3 lives of Bharata as a king, as a deer, and as an exalted Paramhansa, devotee of the Lord, is given in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 19. Translation. 9 of the remaining sons of Rishabhadev became the rulers of the 9 islands of Bharatvarsh, and they exercised complete sovereignty over this planet. 81 sons became twice born Brahmana and helped initiate the Vedic path of fruitive sacrifices, Karma Kanda. Purpose. The 9 Dvipa or islands ruled by the 9 sons of Rishabhadev are the 9 Varsas of Jambu Dvipa, namely Bharat, Kinnar, Hari, Kuru, Hiranmaya, Ramya, Ilavrat, Bhadravaksh and Ketumal. Text 20 and 21. Translation. The 9 remaining sons of Translation. The 9 remaining sons of Rishabha were greatly fortunate sages who worked vigorously to spread knowledge of absolute truth. They wandered about naked and were very well versed in spiritual science. Their names were Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Pradhu, Pipalayan, Avirotra, Dhunila, Chamash, and Karabhajana. Purport. Nimi, the king of Vedeha, asked the following 9 questions to the 9 Yogendra, the saintly son of Rishabha. Number 1. What is the highest good? Chapter 2, verse 30. Number 2. What are the religious principles? Dharma. Natural proclivity, Swabhava, and behavior, Achara, speech, Vakya, and the outward symptom, Lakshan of a Bhagavad, a Vaishnava devotee of the Lord. 2.44. Third, what is the external energy of Vishnu, the Supreme Lord? Fourth, how can one become disassociated from Maya? Fifth, what is the true identity of Brahman? Sixth, what are the 3 types of karma, namely karma based on enjoyment of fruit of work, karma offered to the Supreme Lord, and nishkarma. 7. What are the various pastimes of the various incarnations of the Lord? 8. What is the aim or destination of one who is against the Supreme Lord and devoid of bhakti? What is the aim or destination of one who is against the Supreme Lord and devoid of bhakti? In other words, a non-devotee. And 9th, what are the respective colors, forms, and names of the four Yuga Avatar, the 4 incarnations of the Supreme Lord who appears in the 4 ages, and what is the process of worshipping each of them? The transcendental answer to these inquiries were given by the great devotee Kavi, Havir, Antariksha, Pradhuha, Pipalayan, Avirotra, Durmila, Chamaksha, and Karabhajana. These 9 Paramhansas answered the 9 questions, each in turn, in the following verse. 2.33 to 43, second 2.45 to 55. Text 22, translation. These sages wandered the earth, seeing the entire universe with all its gross and subtle objects as a manifestation of the Supreme Lord and as non-different from the self. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, it is clearly demonstrated in this and the following verse that the 9 saintly sons of Rishabhadev, known as Nav-Yogendra, were situated in the highest stage of spiritual perfection called Paramhansa Charitam, or having fully developed the character of Paramhansas. In other words, they were pure devotees of the Lord. According to Sridhar Swami and Jiva Goswami, the word Atmano Vyaktirekena indicates that the 9 sages saw the universe as being non-different from themselves as well as non-different from the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has additionally commented, Atmanah Paramatmanah Shakshad Avirakterena. Atmanah indicates the super soul. This universe is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, since the entire universe is composed of his energy. Although it is stated here that the cosmic manifestation is non-different from both the living entity and the Supreme Personality of God, one should not think that either the living entity or the Supreme Lord is material. A Vedic aphorism states, Asango Haya Ayam Purusha. The living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead have nothing to do with the material world. Furthermore, Bhagavad Gita says that the entire universe consisting of 8 gross and subtle elements constitute the Bhinna Prakriti or Apara Prakriti, the separated inferior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna clearly states in Bhagavad Gita that he has eternally established his own abode in the kingdom of God, where the life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and that the living entity, being part and parcel of God, is also eternal. Furthermore, once having gone to that eternal abode of the Lord, the living entity never returns to this temporary manifestation. One may therefore ask why the living entity and the Supreme Lord are stated to be non-different from the material universe. The question is very nicely answered by Srila Narada Muni in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.20. Idam hi visham bhagvano evitaro yatha jagat sthan nirodha.
Class.
I could not hear, I was in Tulsi Singh. One may therefore ask why the living entity and the Supreme Lord are stated to be non-different from the material universe. The question is very nicely answered by Srila Narada Muni in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is himself this cosmos, and still he is aloof from it. From him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated, in him it rests, and unto him it enters after annihilation. Unquote. Commenting on Narad's statement, Srila Prabhupada has very nicely explained this delicate philosophical point. Quote, for a pure devotee, the conception of Mukunda, Lord Shri Krishna, is both personal and impersonal. The impersonal cosmic situation is also Mukunda because it is the emanation of the energy of Mukunda. For example, a tree is a complete unit, whereas the leaves and the branches of the tree are emanated part and parcel of the tree. The leaves and branches of the tree are also the tree, but the tree itself is neither the leaves nor the branches. The Vedic version that the whole cosmic creation is nothing but Brahman means that since everything is emanating from the Supreme Brahman, nothing is apart from him. Similarly, the part and parcel, hand and legs are called the body, but the body as a whole unit is neither the hand nor the leg. The Lord is the transcendental form of eternity, cognition and beauty, and thus the creation of energy of the Lord appears to be partially eternal, full of knowledge and beautiful also. Unquote. Quote. According to Vedic version, the Lord is naturally fully powerful, and thus his supreme energies are always perfect and identical with him. Both the spiritual and the material skies and their paraphernalia are emanations of the internal and external energy of the Lord. External energy is comparatively inferior, whereas the internal potency is superior. The superior energy is living force, and therefore she is completely identical with the Lord, but the external energy, being inert, is partially identical. But both the energies are neither equal to nor greater than the Lord, who is generator of all energies. Such energies are always under his control, exactly as electrical energy, however powerful it may be, is always under the control of the engineer. The human being and all other living beings are products of his internal energy. Thus, the living being is also identical with the Lord, but he is never equal to or superior to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada has clearly explained here that both the cosmic manifestation and the living entities are emanations from the Supreme Lord, as confirmed in both, as confirmed both in Vedanta Sutra and in the opening statement of Srimad Bhagavatam, Janmadi Asyayataha. The absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. Similarly, the Ishopanishad states that Om Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Ajaha Purnam Eva Vishishyate. The Supreme Lord, the Absolute Truth, is Purna or complete in Himself. And since this cosmic world is a manifestation of His potency, it also appears to be Purna. In other words, because this material world is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, it is non-different from Him, exactly as the sun's rays are non-different from the sun globe, which is the source of their emanation. Similarly, the living beings who are expansions of the superior or conscious energy of the Supreme Lord are also non-different from Krishna, although this non-difference is qualitative and not quantitative. The gold found in golden ornate, such as a ring and a bracelet, is qualitatively identical with the gold in the mine, but the gold in the mine is quantitatively far superior to the tiny quantity of gold in the bracelet or a ring. Similarly, although we are qualitatively one with the God, being spiritual emanation of His unlimited potency, we are quantitatively infinitesimal and eternally subordinate to the Supreme Powerful. Therefore, the Lord is called Vibhu or infinitely potent, and we are called Anu or infinitesimal or dependent. This is further confirmed in the Vedic literature by the statement Nityo Nityanam Chetno Chetnanam, Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. There are innumerable eternal living entities who are eternally and totally dependent upon the supreme singular living, totally dependent on the supreme singular living entity, the Supreme Lord. That dependence is not an illusion created by material existence, as stated by impersonalist philosopher, but is an eternal relationship in which the Lord is eternally superior and we are eternally inferior. The Lord is eternally independent and we are eternally dependent. The Lord is eternally absolute in Himself and we are eternally relative to His Supreme Personality. Although the Lord is infinitely greater than any other living being or than all of them combined, every living being is qualitatively non-different from the Lord because all living beings are part and parcel emanating from Him. Therefore, in one sense, the living entity is also non-different from the material cosmic manifestation, which is an inferior sister energy of the Lord. Both the living entity and the material nature are Prakriti or feminine, dependent expression of Supreme Purusha. The difference is that the living entity is the superior energy of the Lord because the living entity is conscious and eternal like the Lord, whereas the material energy is the inferior energy of the Lord, lacking consciousness and the eternal form. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has emphasized in this regard that the absolute substance is one and is called Paramatma or the Super Soul. When one has achieved but a partial version of Paramatma, one's understanding of the life is called Atma Darshan or self-realization. When when even this partial understanding is lacking, one essential condition is called Atma Darshana or ignorance of the self. In the state of partial realization of the super soul, without recognition of Paramatma's distinction from the individual soul, the living entity tends to become puffed up by his spiritual achievements, be carried away by mental concoction, or considered himself equal in all respect with God. On the other hand, the living entity situated in Anatma Darshan or material ignorance feels that he is completely different from the Supreme Lord. And since everyone in this material world is interested in himself, the living entity forgets about God, thinking that God is completely different from him and that there is therefore no substantial relationship between him and the God. In this way, the impersonal transcendental, in this way, the impersonal transcendentalist emphasizes only the oneness between God and the living entity, whereas the ordinary materialist overemphasizes the difference. Text 23, translation. The 9 Yogendras are liberated souls who travel freely to the planets of demigods, the perfected mystics, the sadhyas, the heavenly musician, the yakshas, the human beings, and the minor demigods such as Kinnara and the serpent. No mundane force can check their free movement, and exactly as they wish, they can travel as well as to the world of sages, the angels, the ghostly followers of Lord Shiva, the Vidyadhars, the Brahmana, and the cows. Text 24. Once in Anunabha, the former name of earth, they came upon the sacrificial performance of the great soul Maharaj Nimi, which was being carried out under the direction of elevated sages. Text 25. My dear king, seeing those pure devotees of the Lord who rival the sun in brilliance, everyone present, the performer of the sacrifice, the Brahmana, and even the sacrificial fire stood in respect. Text 26. Translation. King Videha Nimi understood that the 9 sages were exalted devotees of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, overjoyed at their auspicious arrival, he offered them suitable sitting places and worshipped them in a proper way, just as one would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The word yatha, yatha arthaha is significant here. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti, the word yatha arthaha means yathochitam or according to the proper etiquette. It is clearly mentioned here that the Nav Yogendra are Narayana Parayana, exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord Narayana or Krishna. Therefore, the word Yatha Arthaha indicates that the Lord worshipped the 9 sages according to the standard Vaishnav etiquette. The etiquette for worshipping exalted Vaishnava is expressed by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur with the words Sakshat Dharitvena Samasta Shastre. An exalted Vaishnava being totally surrendered to the will of the Lord is taken to be transparent medium for the Lord's will. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that even by a moment's association with a pure devotee of the Lord, one can achieve all perfection in life. Therefore, as indicated by the word Kritaha, King Nimi was overjoyed by the auspicious arrival of the sages, and therefore he worshipped them just as one would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although impersonalist philosophers claim that every living entity is equal to God, they cautiously step over the heads of their so-called spiritual master and freely speculate on the nature of the absolute, giving their own whimsical opinion in defiance of the impersonal whim of their so-called guru. In other words, although Mayavadi impersonalists claim that everyone is God, they ultimately show an offensive mentality toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead in rejecting the reality of His eternal form and pastime. Thus, they unwittingly belittle the eternal position of all living beings by denying their eternal personality and activities in the kingdom of God. The impersonalists, through their mental concoction, try to minimize the position of Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities who are part of Him, reducing them theoretically to formless, nameless light, which by their concoction they claim to be the absolute truth. The Vaishnava, however, welcome the Supreme Personality of Godhead and easily understand that the unlimited Supreme Personality has nothing to do with the conditioned, limited, mundane personality we find in the material world. The impersonalists arrogantly assume that there could not be any transcendental or ultimate personality beyond our present experience. But but the Vaishnava intelligently understand that there are many wonderful things far beyond our limited experience. Therefore, they accept the words of Krishna, who states in Bhagavad Gita, Yo mam eva ashuddho. Quote, whoever knows me as a supreme personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharata. In this connection, Srila Prabhupada states, quote, there are many philosophical speculation about the constitutional position of the living entity and the supreme absolute truth. Now, in this verse, the supreme personality of Godhead clearly explains that everyone who knows Lord Krishna as the supreme personality is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita, and these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of Vedas. Therefore, exalted devotees such as the nine Yogendra always accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as expressed by the word Narayana Parayananam. King Nimi was a Vaishnava, and therefore he worshipped the great sages with the same respect with which he would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as shown by the word Yatha Artha. Although impersonalists falsely claim that every living entity is equal to God, they cannot properly respect any living being because of their original offense at the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. Their so-called worship, even of their own guru, is ultimately self-serving and opportunistic. When an impersonalist imagines that he has become God, he has no further need for so-called guru. The Vaishnava, however, because he accepts the supremacy of the eternal personality of Godhead, is ready and willing to offer eternal respects to all living beings, especially to those most fortunate living beings who have achieved shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. A Vaishnava worship of the Lord's representative is not self-serving or opportunistic, but is an expression of eternal love for the Lord and his representative, as indicated here by the word Pitaha. Therefore, it is clear from this verse that not only the nine exalted sons of Rishabdev, but also King Nimi himself were all great devotees of Supreme Personality of Godhead. In defiance to the artificial and mythic concept of impersonalism. Text 27, translation. Overwhelmed by transcendental joy, the king humbly bowed his head and then proceeded to question the nine sages. These nine great souls glowed with their own effulgence and thus appeared equally to the four Kumars, the son of Lord Brahma. Purport. Sridhar Swami has pointed out that the word Swarucha indicates that the Nav Yogindra glowed from their own spiritual effulgence and not due to their ornament or any other cause. The Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, is the original source of all life. His brilliantly glowing body is the source of all pervading Brahmajyoti, the immeasurable spiritual light that is resting place of innumerable universes. The individual soul, being part and parcel of the Lord, is also self-effulgent. In fact, everything in the kingdom of God is self-effulgent as described in Bhagavad Gita 15.6. Na tad bhashyate suryo, na shashanko na pavakaha. Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhamam paramam mama. It has already been described in many ways that the Nav Yogindra were pure devotees of the Lord. Being completely Krishna conscious soul, they naturally radiated the intense effulgence of the soul, as indicated here by the word Swadhisha. Srila Sridhar Swami has also pointed out that the word Brahma Putropama means equal to the son of Brahma indicates that the Nav Yogindra were on the same spiritual platform as the four exalted Kumar brothers. It has been described in the fourth canto that Maharaj Prithu receives the four Kumar with great love and reverence, and here King Nimi is similarly receiving the 9 sons of Lord Rishabhdeva. Receiving exalted Vaishnava with love and reverence is standard spiritual etiquette for those who desire progress and happiness in life. Text 28. Translation. King Videha said, I think that you must be direct associates of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is famous as the enemy of demon Madhu. Indeed, the pure devotees of Lord Vishnu wander throughout the universe not for their personal selfish interest but to purify the all conditioned soul. Purport. King Nimi here welcomes the great sages by glorifying their transcendental activities. It is well known that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the three modes of material nature as stated in Bhagavad Gita 17.7.3. Similarly, his pure devotees are also on the transcendental platform. One may ask how such transcendental living beings as the associate of Lord Vishnu could be seen within the material world. Therefore, it is stated here, Pavanaya Chantihi, the associate of Lord Vishnu, travels throughout the universe to reclaim the fallen conditioned soul on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As representative of the governor may be seen moving within the prison house, but that does not mean that the governor's representative has become a conditioned prisoner. It is understood that he is within the prison to negotiate the possible release of those prisoners who have rectified their criminal propensity. Similarly, the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead called Parivarajikacharya wander throughout the universe inviting everyone to surrender to Lord Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead for the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the mercy of the associates of Lord Vishnu has been described in the connection with the salvation of Ajami. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati has pointed out that the associates of Lord Vishnu are as merciful as the Lord himself. Even though the ignorant members of human society are not interested in approaching the servant of Lord Vishnu, the devotees of the Lord, without any false prestige, act to liberate the conditioned soul from their perpetual misfortune. Text 29. Translation. For the conditioned soul, the human body is most difficult to achieve and it can be lost at any moment. But I think that even those who have achieved human life rarely gain the association of pure devotees who are dear to the Lord of Vaikuntha. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word Dehinam means Bhavo Deha Bhavanti Yesham Te. Quote, the conditioned soul who accept innumerable material bodies. According to some wishful thinkers, a living entity in the human form of life will never be degraded to the lower form, such as that of animals or plant. But despite this wishful thinking, it is a fact that according to our activities at present, we will be elevated or degraded by the laws of the God. At the present time in a human society, there is no clear or precise understanding of the nature of the life. Foolish scientists have invented highly sophisticated terminologies and theories to bluff innocent people into belief that life comes from chemical reaction. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has exposed this bluff in his book Life Comes from Life, which points out that although scientists claim that life comes from chemical, they could not produce so much as an insect, even from unlimited quantities of chemical.
Stop here. पोछा पोछा नीचे
Hare Krishna.
पूछो ना।
Krishna